Hello and welcome to Tuesday Community Connections. You know, this year, 2020, is a year that I think all of us are going to be just excited to be finished with. I mean, it's not been an easy year in any way you look at it. The pandemic that started early on and still is with us now this close to the end of the year has just worn everybody down. Politics, too, I think has people just tired and worn out. I have to admit that I get a little bit discouraged and frustrated with the prominence of politics in everything that we do. It seems like we look with political eyes at absolutely everything, whether or not it's political. And we see politics into things that have nothing to do with politics. And so whether you wear a mask or not has to do with politics. Whether churches are open or not has to do with politics. Whether the news you look at is right or wrong has to do with politics. What you think about an issue has to do with politics. Almost as if there's a red box and a blue box and you fit in one or the other, and like we don't have even the ability to think outside that box. We need to fit into one or the other, and that's how we see and people see us, that okay, that's the box you fit in, and if you say that kind of thing, then you're this or then you're that, and you're either for me or against me. It's discouraging to see how it's divided our country, it's divided our communities, and it's even divided families, simply because we decide that if you're not the same as me or don't agree with me, then you're a bad person and you're on the other side. And it's amazing to me, I guess, that we simply don't understand that we're stronger together. That even though we have differences, and who doesn't have differences with somebody else? I mean, show me even a family of 5 that everybody agrees with absolutely everything and thinks the same way. That'd be a little boring, don't you think? Our differences can be things that we live with. They can also be things that enrich our lives, make us think a little bit differently, or maybe see through some different eyes, maybe show us blessings or downfalls that we otherwise wouldn't have seen. But we let politics get in the way, whether or not they're there, and divide us and discourage us and break us apart. And so instead of being strengthened by the differences and by conversations that aren't loaded and angry, we let them divide us rather than bring us together. At the same time, I have to say, I'm a little jealous of all of this political stuff going on. I mean, when you look at it, everything, as I said, is divided by politics. It depends on your politics as to what you think or believe or where you fit. I'm amazed at the commitment to look with political eyes at everything and to see everything as political even when it's not there. I'm amazed at the commitment to the party to do whatever, the red or the blue or wherever you stand, to almost blindly go and follow everything that they say and not even really think about it. And what it makes me wonder, and where my jealousy comes from, is why is it that we're so willing to look at life through the lenses of political eyes, and we see everything politically so clearly, but as Christians, we're not able really to look at with our Christian eyes as much as we do with political eyes. I mean, when it comes to faith, it's a part of who we are. Yep, it's there, and we claim to be faithful people, but do we see everything through eyes of faith? Do we look at everything that we do and wonder, how does that fit with my faith? That's where I get jealous, because I think sometimes our faith is just this piece of who we are, part of who we are, but it doesn't affect everything. And if you know what being a Christian is, I mean, Christian is a follower of Christ, a follower of Jesus. Being Christian doesn't mean any particular set of beliefs. I mean, it does mean that Jesus is your Savior, that Jesus died to give you new life, and that you believe in God, and that God is the Creator, and that our Bible tells us the story of faith. But being Christian has less to do with the specifics of what we believe as it does, or the church we belong to, as it does how we live. To be Christian means to be a follower of Jesus. It has to do with our priorities. It has to do with our values. It has to do with what things are important and what things aren't. It has to do with how we live everyday life, and the big things and the small things. And if you think about it, to be a follower of Jesus isn't a label that we wear. It's active. It's a lifestyle. It's how we live. So I've wondered, what if as a follower of Jesus, as a Christian, we lived that faith as strongly and boldly as we look through political eyes? I mean, what would happen if we did look through eyes of faith at everyday life and at everything that we do? What would we see? How would we live? I mean, this time of harvest that we're in right now, the abundance of the harvest, it's a lot of work, that is true, but look at the gift of creation that God has given to us. What if we looked at harvest through the eyes of God's abundance to us? God's gift to us of land and of growth, of sun and rain and everything that makes those teeny little seeds grow and produce such wonderful crops, rather than looking at politically, who gets what, or how much money does that give to us and how much money is somebody else going to take. What if we look through the eyes of God's abundance? And at work, what if we looked at our work through eyes of faith? That work is God's call to use the gifts and the abilities that He's given to us, to use them to enrich the world. That God has made us who we are and given us the jobs that we have. That's our vocation to follow God, to use our gifts so that the world might be blessed and might be bettered, but that it's a gift of God, not just something that we do on our own or by ourselves. What if we looked at relationships through the eyes of faith? I mean, all of our relationships. What if we looked at our spouse, our family, our neighbors, our friends, through the eyes of faith? God's called to love your neighbor as yourself. What if we lived that way, following Jesus, showing others respect and dignity and love that's more than feelings, that it has to do with how we live? To love one another doesn't mean that you think that other person is absolutely wonderful and your heart flutters when you see them, but to love them is that agape, self-giving love, that you care about them because they're a person, because they're a creation of God, because they were created by God and sent to be brothers and sisters to you and to me. What if we looked through eyes of faith at other people, even at those that we don't agree with, or those that we don't want to spend a whole lot of time with? But what if we looked through the eyes of faith that saw others as creations of God and children of God? And what about issues? Issues that so quickly we go to political. Almost as if you believe something on one issue, then on every other issue you believe in the same thing that party says or does. But what if we look through Christian eyes? For example, what did Jesus do with hungry people? I mean, He didn't look whether they were good or bad or earned it or not. He didn't look at what political party they were on or how much money they had or didn't. Jesus fed the hungry. What about sick people? Jesus didn't ask them for a resume, but cared about sick people and brought them healing. What about those who were forgotten and ignored? Jesus took time and welcomed them. We need to look at, how did Jesus treat people, all people, even those that were trying to kill Him? Remember from the cross, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That one might be a little bit tough for all of us, but couldn't we look through eyes of faith and to see that God calls us to love one another? As the old saying was, what would Jesus do? That's how we need to look at life and what we do and what we decide and what our priorities are and where we set our values, what's most important and what matters to us and to the world. And so I wonder, and I'm a little bit jealous of the political landscape, because what would our lives be like and what our community be like if we looked at life and people and issues and daily work through the eyes of faith? What if we look not just on Sundays or when we go to church or when we're with other Christian people talking about our faith? What if we looked 24/7 with Christian eyes? I'm jealous of the political commitment that seems to be so strong in our country. And my prayer is that you and I as Christians can be just as strong in our commitment to following Jesus and to looking at the world through the eyes of faith, to look and to listen to God's call, to love one another, and to follow where He would have us go. It is a scary life in some ways. We go places we'd never choose to go. We're called to do things that maybe we would choose not to do. But boy, it's a life of fulfillment. It's a life filled with love. It's a life that gives us peace. And it's a life of following the God who created us and loves us and calls us. So I challenge you this week. Can you spend even one day looking through eyes of faith and be as strong in that commitment as so many are to their political beliefs and their political colors? Let us this week wear the colors of faith and show the world there is a different way, a way of hope. God bless you as you do that.